Hello everyone, my name is Clantis and welcome to the Clan. So without further ado, let's get into the video. But before we get into the video, smash me the like button. And also, if you are just watching the videos and you are not subscribed yet, subscribe. That's all I'm going to say to you. Subscribe. It's good for you. And if you are a person that is not interested in intellectual conversations that we have on this channel, maybe you shouldn't subscribe, but I would like you to subscribe nonetheless. Anyways, guys, let's get into the video because today we are going back to the North Gauteng High Court and the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, and it's getting a little hot. If it's not hot, because Okay, Mrs. Vivian Cronje continued to testify in the North Gauteng High Court regarding the time when she was presiding over accused number 2's confession. And there are a lot of discrepancies that were brought to her attention as a magistrate that she had committed. And of course, many of them she takes responsibility or accountability or admits to them, which kind of like says to me, then how will the confession be admissible at the end of the day? That is why I still believe that accused number 2 will be the first one to be acquitted. And right now, before I get to that, we are now on accused number 1, whom now the spotlight is on regarding everything that has transpired before he actually met with Mboto. Oof, I am very confused here. I am so confused by the current witness right now, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, now we'll get to that. But let's finish with Cronje, because Cronje, she was questioned by Advocate Mshololo. I thought that Advocate Mnisi, because he looked promising on Friday before the court adjourned to today, but turns out that Advocate Mnisi, well, did not have any questions for the witness. Same goes with Advocate Ngumalo, had no questions for the witness. However, Advocate Mshololo was like, well, let's ask some few clarification questions, starting with the question of police officers. Remember, in her evidence in chief, Cronje said when she walked to room 2, she saw a battalion of police, or not battalion, but let's say battalion of police officers that were heavily armed, and there was a suspect and a man that was wearing a suit. And then, of course, as she proceeded, she wanted to know from these police officers to submit their names and appointment letters and things of that nature. However, I still believe they ran away, even though the court does not want to have that on the record that they ran away. However, though, Advocate Mshololo wanted to know from Magistrate Cronje that those people actually defied her request, and she said yes, they defied her requests. And then you have to ask yourself, why? Why did they defy her request? Because it's clear that there was something that was irregular about a suspect brought to her as a person she called an ordinary person, in handcuffs, by the way, coming so that she can preside over an alleged confession. And so they split. They didn't give her what she needed. And then she says it again, something that she denied on Friday, that when she went into room 2, she managed to get the appointment letters or certificates of 2 Metro Police officers that were standing outside of the interview room. Remember, she denied that how is it possible that the suspect saw 2 officers outside of the interview room when the door was locked? And today she confirms that indeed there were 2 officers that were stationed outside while they continued with the interview inside. And I'm like, ma'am, get your story straight. Advocate Mshololo was not relenting on her, even though her tone kind of, like it was low and it was mellow and she spoke like a professional. I was like, okay, here we go. I like that. Then Advocate Mshololo moved to so-called accused number 2's legal representative by the name of Njiako. But though she did not mention the name, she was more on about the man who was wearing a suit, who purported to be the legal representative of accused number 2. What I found striking is the fact that Cronje tells the court that Mr. Njiako, who was wearing a suit, he was not carrying anything in hand. What kind of a lawyer that carries not even a pen? Many lawyers, they pull the wheeled briefcase Whenever they go, they have files, they got documents, they got everything, and they write notes whenever there is a communication of some sort between their client and whoever. But no, this particular lawyer, he had nothing in hand. He was not writing anything. He was not carrying any files. He was not pulling a briefcase. He was doing nothing. And yet, this is the legal representative of Ntanzi. That did not make sense to me at all. It does not make sense to me at all. I don't think that will make sense to any logical thinking person that's watching this video either. Because my eyes were on the floor. You know that cartoon, almost like that? I was like, no, this lawyer is dodgy. And then Advocate Mshololo wanted to know about his fidelity certificate, which he did not produce. Clantis said, I only took his word and the word of his client that this is an attorney that is going to be representing him during the presiding of the confession. And I still say the interpreter misinterpreted as per, I think, and I suspect, per the brief. And so, of course, Clantis, knowing very well she doesn't understand or read Zulu and things like that, so she took whatever the interpreter said. Advocate Mshololo asked Clantis if she asked the attorney for any mandate, like those mandates that you get from your clients that is written. She said no, she did not ask for it. Once again, she did not see the need to ask this lawyer because already both the lawyer and Ntanzi confirmed that he is the legal representative of the suspect. So she found no reason why she should ask for his appointment letter, for fidelity, appointments and all those sort of stuff. I thought kinda like, no, as a magistrate, you should at least ask more questions. Like, show me this and show me that. Which law firm do you work for? If you're an advocate, where are you practicing? Which bar are you registered with? Is it the Gauteng? Which one? So that we all know exactly if this individual is indeed an attorney or an advocate that had come to represent Ntanzi. And then Mshololo moved to the 48-hour detention, and she wanted to know from Clantis, did you hear the suspect tell you that I was arrested on the 16th of June and then I'm brought to you on the 24th of June and there's 8 days that is, and he's not been to court? Why didn't she do any further inquiry about that? She says no, she did take note of that and did report to the senior prosecutor about this irregularity. And she says it with her own mouth that that was an irregularity and therefore she did report it to Duplessis. But Mshololo wanted to know, what did you do about it? Then she repeated to the court that she reported this irregularity. See, my Zulu tongue is coming. The irregularity to Duplessis. That's as far as she could go about it. What Duplessis did about it, she doesn't know. As a matter of fact, after she submitted all the documents to Duplessis, she never heard about this case again up until she was called as a witness. However, Mshololo wanted to know, so that she could have this on record, did the suspect tell you that he has not bathed, he has not called his family, and he has not seen a court? And then she read paragraph 9, page 6, and said, indeed, that is exactly what he reported to her. And then Mshololo wanted to know, then why did you proceed with the process of presiding over this alleged confession? She says, I was mandated by my senior to preside over this confession. Everything else she did not ask about. However, she did note the suspect's complaints. And Clantis continued to say, or kept pressing, that the suspect seemed to have known his constitutional rights, Section 35, of having a fair trial and having a legal representative and things of that nature. And she continued to say that accused number 2 had legal representation, so there was no need for her to ask further questions, because she assumes that the suspect would have consulted with his lawyer, and then of course, with all that being done, they will be sitting in front of her, fully understanding the Section 35, fully understanding that he had legal representation. So she didn't see any need to be asking any other questions to the suspect. Then Advocate Mshololo said, but it was within your power to stop the process immediately after hearing the complaints from the suspect. I think there was a little bit of silence from Ms. Cronje, but at the same time, she continued to press on her point that he had legal representation. But Mshololo wanted her to understand that the constitutional rights of the suspects were violated. And Cronje said, yes, the irregularity, she reported it to Du Plessis. And then Mshololo wanted to know or confirm from Cronje that including the 48-hour to appear before the court, she said yes. Then at this point, I thought that the senior prosecutor of the Boksburg Magistrates Court needs to be called to the stand, because there are so many questions that I have for this particular senior prosecutor if I was a defense lawyer. One of which is, in your practice, you make calls to your colleagues, or when you are mandating them to do something, or it needs to be written down. And why didn't you write an email with the letterhead of the Department of Justice and have a conversation with Ms. Cronje of this nature, so that there's proof that indeed there was communique between herself and Ms. Cronje, and Ms. Cronje was mandated to preside over a confession? That to me is a question I feel that the defense needs to ask if indeed Du Plessis is called on the stand regarding this matter. It was quite interesting and entertaining when Mshololo asked Cronje about her experience, how long she's been a magistrate, and she said since 1996 or 1997. And then Mshololo said, no, I want to know the exact amount of years you've been a magistrate. And the magistrate was caught with mathematics, like since 1996 to now, how long would that be? In my mind, I'm like 27. And then of course she had to do calculations and said 27 years. At that point, I was feeling really bad for her, because I'm looking at Mshololo, I'm like, where are you going with this? But then again, I kind of caught it why Mshololo was asking her that. I think she was more like testing her memory and all of that stuff, that at the time when the accused was at her desk, how old and how is her mental state at the time as a magistrate? And then it diminished. As far as I can tell, it diminished. And of course, that is registered on record that this lady couldn't even remember how long she's been a magistrate. I thought that was a smart move. So then Mshololo wanted to know from Cronje, then after you were done with Exhibit JJ, what did you do? She said that's when she asked the suspect to sign in front of her, in front of the interpreter, in front of his legal representative, and in front of, I still think there was number 5 there, whom now she's no longer mentioning. And then that was the end. And that was also the end of Mshololo's cross-examination of Cronje. Of course, the judge wanted to know from the state if there were any re-examination. Of course, Advocate Baloyi would have some questions for her emanating from the cross-examination, but he focused more on the question of the cross-examination of Mshololo, because I think Mshololo touched a nerve there for the state, and I think that was about the injuries, because Advocate Mshololo wanted to know that is it also possible that a person can be injured on the inside, not necessarily on the outside. And of course, Cronje said, indeed, that is highly possible. And that is when, Advocate Baloyi, I'm not quite sure how he exactly wanted her to answer this, because you cannot turn a person inside out and see if they have internal injuries or not. Of course, you know that the police are not stupid. They're not going to beat you to a pulp and blue and red and purple and all those colors. They are going to do something that is going to mess you up internally, like suffocating you with a plastic bag. How do you prove that? Unless you take the suspect to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that is where you are going to hear of the internal injuries, because they'll still be traumatized. Whichever way you might try to cover this up, when a person is injured internally, they come out whenever they are sat down by a psychologist or a psychiatrist or somebody along those lines who can tell that this individual was indeed injured mentally. And I kept asking myself why that report was not made, why the suspect was not taken to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so that this so-called confession it is solid. It was also quite interesting to see Advocate Mngomezulu standing up and asking that the prosecutor should not speak in Afrikaans. And then, of course, the judge mixed what Mngomezulu was trying to say. He said, no, the witness can go ahead and speak any language she wants to. However, from the States, English, please. Yes, we made a mistake in the beginning that the Afrikaans should be spoken on both sides. Now, that would prejudice the client if the state itself is also speaking in Afrikaans, when the accused cannot understand or actually misunderstand some few things because they don't understand the Afrikaans language. And this is when, of course, the court said, okay, Mr. Baloyi, speak English. Of course, the witness will speak a language of her choice, which is Afrikaans. So towards the end of Cronje's testimony, this is when the judge wanted some clarity or clarifications on Mr. Mngomezulu. How did he look? His appearance, is it tall, short, all that stuff? And then Miss Cronje said, well, she did not see any disabilities. That's when I had Wi-Fi problem a little bit, and then the picture or image was gone for about 2 minutes, so I wasn't sure what they were talking about thereafter. However, I did catch where they were talking about where the judge was asking Cronje at any stage, did accused number 2 ask who this man was, talking about Mngomezulu? And this is when Cronje said no. In fact, he's the one who confirmed that Mngomezulu is his legal representation. And then, of course, Advocate Mngomezulu stood up and wanted to know the color of the suit that this man was wearing, the lawyer. She said she was not sure. She gave, I think, 2 different colors, one greenish and the other one was the brownish. But she does not remember what sort of suit or color suit he was wearing. I think, once again, he was piggybacking from what Advocate Mshololo did about her memory. I'm not quite sure how old Cronje is, and possibly the way may talk about her memory loss and memory itself, how stable it is and things like that. And I was like, okay, as much as this point is this small, but it is also significant to remember during arguments that this lady's memory itself is kind of like diminishing or something of that nature. And then Mngomezulu wanted to know from her if the lawyer was writing anything. She said no, she did not notice because she was busy with the suspect at the time to notice anything around her. And then Mshololo, of course, stood up one more time and asked one question. How did she confirm that Mngomezulu was actually an attorney? This is when she said, well, I did see his fidelity number or something like that. Other than that, of course, Ntanzi also confirmed that this is his legal representative. So she found no reason to doubt him. So I kind of like made a mental note with the next witness, which was a Miss Tsepiso. Miss Tsepiso, I do not understand why she was even called as a witness at this point. She's the interpreter who was interpreting for Cronje on this particular day. And I was very doubtful of this lady. Okay, she's legit. She's a principal at the interpreter at the Boksburg court. And of course, she went through her experience and when she started in 1997. And I'm like, 1997, she sounds so young. That was the first thing that came across my mind. She sounded around 25, 30-ish. I'll be pushing it if I say 30-ish, but she sounded really, really young. But anyway, she's been an interpreter since 1997, and she's gone through the ranks and stuff like that. And I think that Advocate Mngomezulu kind of like pressed something here about her misinterpretation, or not exactly misinterpretation, more like an ambiguity in her interpretation of the statement. Of course, I did take a little bit of a walk and I came back and they were discussing that. So I'm not quite sure what was it that was an ambiguity that got the judge himself hot under the collar and wanted to know how is this going to help Mngomezulu. And then there was an adjournment that I was like, what's going on? The judge, once again, I feel like he overreached. He went as far as going to his chambers, came back with an authority of 1979, where actually it says that the interpreter, anything the interpreter says, whether it's a misinterpretation or interpretation, it is prima facie evidence and it is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And in my mind, I'm thinking, But we live in a constitutional dispensation where Section 35 of the Constitution overrides that authority of 1979. I can't remember the citation, what it was. And I was like, but the whole Section 35 of the Constitution of 1996, Act 108 of 1996, kind of like deals away with things like that, because at the end of the day, the suspect, who now is an accused in this particular matter, needs to have a fair trial. And now you look at that precedent of 1975 and Section 35 of the Constitution, which one weighs more? I would go towards the Constitution. And then I thought Advocate Mngomezulu was going to get up and say, but Section 35 of the Constitution overrides that precedent of 1979. But of course, he did not say anything. So I thought, okay, maybe he will reserve that for arguments. I'm not quite sure if he's going to use it at all. But I thought, sir, I'm talking now to the judge, but that precedent that you just read out, it's overridden by Section 35 of the Constitution that the accused needs to have a fair trial. So if there was a misinterpretation or an ambiguity, Section 35 overrides that and says, no, the accused needs to have a fair trial. If there was a misinterpretation, then how is that going to amount to a fair trial? So that is why I am saying, guys, there is absolutely no way that you can disregard the Constitution because of some old authority that this judge loves quoting from. So definitely no, not in Section 35 era. That misinterpretation needs to be argued during arguments. That is my submission. And this is when, after all was said and done, we had another witness on the stand by a colonel or lieutenant, Colonel James Radebe. Colonel James Radebe was an interesting witness on the stand, I must say, who has so many mistakes on his statement, which you can just tell, guys. You can tell this is all lies. All of this was when it was submitted to Advocate Baloyi. He looked at it as like, oh no, if we put this date, they're going to calculate and say, oh my goodness, we had kidnapped this suspect. There is no way. The whole 48-hour, I believe, it was something that they were trying to fix in that statement. Everything that was written on Colonel Radebe's statement reflects the truth. However, there's a lot of scratching of dates and correction of time. And then Advocate Baloyi was like, I'm sorry, there's a fan on, it's a little bit hot. So Advocate Mngomezulu was like, no, your statement reflects the truth. It was altered when the document was then submitted a long time ago to the state. And the state, of course, had to come to him and say, okay, here we need to make some few corrections. And then when I'm going to cross-examine you, you are going to mention this on record that you made a mistake. One mistake is too many, but two, no. I am so sorry, Mr. Radebe. You are lying through your teeth on the stand. The one thing that I found very interesting, which is the common denominator when it comes to accused number one, is the fact that Mr. Radebe became a police officer in the 80s. Now, okay, this is just me, guys. This is just me. If you look at Mboto's, if you look at Mboto himself, he was appointed a police officer in 1986. This one, the one that is currently on the stand, Mr. Radebe, was appointed a police officer in 1989 or something, or 88 or something like that. He was trained in Hammerskraal. Now, if you look at both these officers, they were trained during apartheid. And then if you know anything about apartheid police, the special force and all those people, especially if you focus particularly on black police officers, most of whom were trained, I believe, by the special force. And in the special force, of course, trained most of the black police not to fight crime, but to do what? To abstract confessions from political freedom fighters. And they would use all kinds of tactics to abstract that particular confession or to impimpa their own comrades. And now these two officers of the 1980s are the ones that were brought to accused number one. One is the one that took him for pointing out of places. The other one sat down in a confession. Boto sat down in a confession. Radebe took him around, basically to do pointing. Of course, Radebe is not stupid. He was well trained by the apartheid police that when you do not want your suspect or the person that is being picked to be shown injuries, do not hurt them externally. I'm sure that was the training. Do not hurt them externally, because if you hurt them externally, that is a violation of human rights and all of that stuff. Here today in 2023, that is constitutional rights of the person that you would have harmed. So your injuries needs to be internal. That is why you hear of plastic bag suffocation that was used. Of course, we heard many a times by freedom fighters that they would have what you call these things, plastic pulled over their faces, and then they would suffocate to a point where they actually point out their fellow comrades. If you go to John Foster, is it John Foster? They would actually put like electric whatnot on their private parts until they spoke or revealed their comrades' whereabouts, what political plans they are planning, and things of that nature. This particular two officers, that was their job. That is why they were the best candidates to take accused number one and torture him the way they tortured him. Of course, allegedly, we'll say. But my logic says there is no way that the current police officers, they were not trained to do that. They were trained to ask questions in a dignified manner. But the 1980s police, no. They know all the tricks. They know all the tips. And they know all the hacks on how to abstract confession out of a person trained by the special force. That is where I'm just going to leave this one for you to think about. That's food for thought for you. But I want you to have it in mind that I believe that accused number one and two were indeed suffocated until they had to agree to a crime they never committed. The two dates as well is a dead giveaway. It's a dead giveaway that Radebe is lying through his teeth. And then, of course, he's of a particular age. And then when he speaks, he's going to speak as though, like, as old as I am, why would you think I'm lying? Because you are lying. Lies has no age. And the other thing that I found quite interesting was how he actually took accused number one's constitutional right. I bet if Advocate Mngomezulu asked Radebe to please recite Section 35 of the Constitution in court, because we want to hear something, I promise you this particular witness will not be able to say it word for word without looking at it, without looking at Section 35, particularly the part about remaining silent. Anything you say will be used against you in the court of law. Also about legal representation and all of that stuff. I do not think that you will know how to recite that part of Section 35 of the Constitution. And the interesting part about Radebe's testimony was about the photos, that how they took the photos with him with his clothes on, photos with him with his clothes off, meaning the upper part of his body. And in my mind, I'm thinking, but the injuries, you know very well they're internal. Why didn't you take him also to a psychologist or a psychiatrist? Then we balance out these two reports. You know, why don't they go there? I want to know. I could be injured internally. I will want to see a psychologist, and once I'm put under the what do you call this, whatever psychologists do, of course the truth will come out. Of course the truth will come out. Whether you are afraid or not, you will speak the truth somewhere, somehow. They know how to abstract the truth out of you. I'm talking about psychologists and psychiatrists. So why don't we have that report? So definitely Phakade, who is the photographer, we want him on the stand. There are some few questions that he needs to answer regarding the photos. Maybe the injuries were below the belt. We don't know. Maybe they put some electric wires on his scrotum. We don't know. We want to know exactly how was this accused number one's body from head to toe look like. But in particular, his mental status at that time when he was taken to point out places and taken to Vosloorus and all these places and Alberton. And the other thing that was a highlight for me that I found quite interesting was about Albertine jail or police station. Advocate Mngomezulu pointed out to Radebe that that police station has a holding cell. Only one holding cell. And then, of course, Radebe said, okay, I'm hearing this for the first time. And then he says, this is where I found it very interesting, the handing over. Who handed over accused number one? He said, well, all the police that were present in that police station, they were not interested in taking responsibility for handing over of the suspect over to me. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, are the police actually allowed to do that? Because they said that they're afraid of an escaping. And then in my mind, I'm like, in your evidence in chief, you talked about how the suspect was surrounded by police officers, including Metro Police. And then I'm like, okay, then how would they experience an escape? And then I was like, okay, fine. Then who opened the cell? Who's the person that said, okay, the cell is open, or here's the key to the cell right there at the door. You can just twist what do you call this? The key, and then you get the suspect out. Who was that police officer? Because that is a handover as far as I'm concerned. We want to hear from that particular officer, whether it's a female or female. This act that, oh, we are afraid of an escape, to me, that is just frivolous excuse. The second highlight for me was the interpreter. Not having an interpreter. Just because you are a Zulu-speaking person, we still need an interpreter. Because the performer is written in English. So when you are translating or you're interpreting Zulu because you're a Zulu man, and on top of, how do we know that after you were speaking to accused number one or suspect at the time, what you were writing down on the performer is exactly what you were saying? How do we know that? How do we know that? Remember, you were trained by the apartheid police. We must not forget that. We must not forget, because we know that those police officers during apartheid, they used to be liars. There are bodies that are buried today because of their lies. So how do we know that what he was telling you is what you wrote down as an interpretation? How do we know that you were actually incriminating him of things that he did not say? How do we know? So for me, already, this confession needs to be thrown out. You don't have witnesses. You got nothing. I know. Come on. This is South Africa. Constitutional democracy. We don't do things like that. Probably the third thing that I also picked up from Radebe is that all the pages of the confession were signed with a signature as well as initials and a thumbprint. While Mkronier only has initials but not thumbprints as well as signature on all pages. I found that quite interesting, why there is no consistency when it comes to confessions in South Africa. It was quite interesting when Advocate Mngomezulu asked Radebe about the correction method. What correction method did he use when he made those mistakes? Is the correction done immediately, or was it done just before he's under oath in court? He said, oh, well, he started giving just lame excuses like, oh, well, when I did this document, I submitted the same day. I was only now that when I came to court that I was told of these two mistakes. Sir, no. No, sir. No. I do not accept that. I do not accept that, because lies you were telling on the stand. I believe the dates that you wrote on the statement are the correct ones. The ones that are scratched off, those are the lie ones. So it was quite interesting to hear Gininda's name once again being mentioned by this particular witness, that he got a call from Gininda while he was in Northwest in his Rustenburg office to come and preside over a confession. He says it's also the Justice of the Peace, and then the other guy as well, the 1980s police officer. He too was a Justice of the Peace. I was like, okay, I see what you're trying to do here, but at the same time, there are too many discrepancies. Too many constitutional violations that are going on in this with these two justices of the peace. The way they conducted the so-called confessions, unconstitutional. This is a very important question that Advocate Mngomezulu asked Radebe was, you won't dispute that the suspect was taken on the 5th of June from Valeria to Alberton. He said, no, I would not dispute that. And then furthermore, the Advocate Mngomezulu wanted to know that because you travel from Northwest to Alberton, would you dispute that the suspect was taken to different places and assaulted in those different places, including the pointing out place? Would you dispute that? He said he does not have any comment on that. He would not dispute it. However, though, he does say that the suspect did not report that to him. And in my mind, I'm thinking, why would he report something when you, I'm thinking, are the one that is aggressive towards him? With all these apartheid tactics of how to assault a person, how to abstract a confession out of them, and things of that nature. Why would he tell you that? So the other interesting thing that Radebe said about accused number 1 was the fact that he comes from KwaNongoma, when in fact he comes from Emahlabathini. And then this is when Radebe said, that means that he lied to me. In my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think so. I don't think so. You got caught on your own lies. I think he made the assumption because all the other guys that are accused today, they come from KwaNongoma, and he thought, okay, he must come from KwaNongoma because they are cousins, they are related, they are friends, so they all come from the same place in KwaZulu-Natal. I think that is what was in his head. And lastly for me was, how can you be an interpreter and a police officer at the same time? How can you also be your own witness to the suspect being taken away from his cell? Those are irregularities, guys. So Mngomezulu also had this witness pinned down about follow-up questions. Did you ask him what did he understand about the section 35 of the Constitution? And of course, Radebe was like, but I'm a Zulu speaker and he's a Zulu speaker. There was no need for me to ask follow-up questions. And I'm like, I don't think he understands what Advocate Mngomezulu is asking him. But anyways, it's in the court records that he did not ask follow-up questions about what does he understand about his Section 35 rights. So I was also satisfied with the fact that he didn't answer those questions, and he kept going on about he's a Zulu speaker, the other one is a Zulu speaker, and all that sort of stuff. And the whole point about an interpreter and witnesses as well. How do you sign something down, a legal document without witnesses, is what I want to know. So basically, this is where the court adjourned until tomorrow, and Advocate Mngomezulu, I think, will continue with this particular witness on the stand currently, and I cannot wait to hear more lies from this particular witness. And I hope that Advocate Mngomezulu is going to ask or cross-examine this witness, because there are some few things I felt that Advocate Mngomezulu ought to have asked. But anyways, we'll hear tomorrow when the court resumes at the North Gauteng High Court in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. And I still think that Senzo Meyiwa is fighting for justice. Fight, Meyiwa. Fight. Anyways, guys, if you like the video, give it a like. If you didn't like the video, give it a like. Anyways, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. And don't forget to click the bell notification so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much to everybody that's super thanking the channel and supporting it financially. I highly appreciate you guys so very much. Also, leave me a comment down below and let me know, what did you think about what happened today in court today? From Cronje to Tapiso to now Radebe. What's your take? I'm very much interested to hear that. I thought this video was going to be in 2. But anyways, I'm glad that I had it in under 1 video. And also share the video far and wide. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and share, as well as subscribe to other YouTubers' channels. And thank you so much for watching. See you next time with a new video. Goodbye.